Well, good morning, Codger Biker here, and I'm out on a 690 Enduro R. Well, the most intimidating thing about this bike is the seat. First of all, it's like a plank of wood in Enduro style, although to be fair it's a little bit more cushion than your average Enduro, though not by much. It's narrow and relatively flat, which is good for moving backwards and forwards Enduro style. But I think if you're going to do long distances, seat concepts is probably going to be a necessity. And given the cost of those, although this bike's at the moment reduced for the end of season, a seat concepts seat to get to the UK is probably going to cost you £400 thereabouts, maybe more, maybe a bit less, I'm not sure. So that's a cost to factor into it. Sitting on here now, it feels quite comfortable, but I have noticed after an hour you do feel it. But I bought the bike knowing that full well, so we'll deal with that in due course. The other main thing about the seat, of course, is it's so high. It's 910mm, which is way above my comfort. Generally on a heavy bike I don't want to be more than sort of 830mm at the most, which is sort of the seat height of a 790 Adventure S, CB500, that sort of height. So I have every intention of having this bike lowered. There is a KTM lowering kit which I believe doesn't void the warranty or anything in the UK. You could put a Cuba link in it or whatever, but I'm not sure how you would be with warranty and things on that. So there is a lowering kit, and there is a possibility. I did order it, but it's been on back order for a long time, and I don't think I would have had the bike for another couple of months if I'd waited. So I decided to try the bike as it is, and then maybe have it lowered later. I have to say, the bike is so light, it's so much almost bicycle-like, that stopping on tiptoes really hasn't been a problem. I can get my foot down on one side if I do the old 1 foot stop, if it looks like it's a bit uneven or potholes, which is how I generally stop anyway, and I can touch the ground with tiptoes either side. So just purely and simply due to its weight, I'm pondering now whether to keep the seat at this height, because I can cope with it. Just any heavier and I definitely would not be able to cope with it. So that's obviously going to have ramifications if I started adding luggage to it. But as that's not the intention at this early stage, then for now I'm just going to ride it around for a while and see how I feel. Well, as you can probably see, there's no wind protection at all. It's pretty much like a naked bike, which is brilliant up to 60 miles an hour because you get no turbulence. Quite often turbulence is caused by the screens on adventure bikes, and there's no turbulence at all on this. You just go along, nice smooth airflow, like a motorcycle. So I'm doing 58 miles an hour now, and it's wonderful. But, and there's a big but, once you start getting to 70 miles an hour, it's very, very windy, and you do feel like you're going to be blown off the bike. So again, I'm probably, if I start thinking about going longer distances, going to try out a few screens. The problem with adding a screen to this is it's just not a bolt-on job. You've got to drill the actual headlight fairing. I think there is one Touratech one which goes into the triple clamp bolts, but it's not for this version of the bike, so we'll probably try a Puig at some point. Other than that, protection's minimal. So being narrow is its strength as well as its weakness. But here I am, 60 miles an hour over a river in the middle of quite a wind flow, and it's fine. Feels like riding a motorbike. I'll go on the motorway in a minute, I will see. Well, you can see that it's got two mirrors. I don't like them at all. They look like they're stuck on upside down or something, but there's no vibrations in them really, and I'm doing 60 miles an hour or so over the bridge. You can see a car behind me clear enough, but I really don't like them, so they're getting double taken soon enough. That'll probably be the first thing I ever put on this bike, is some double take mirrors. I think they're essential anyway. The bike goes over, they fold in, and sitting this high the bike could go over, couldn't it? But let's be positive. Yes, well, again, gone from one end of the scale to the other. This bike comes with LCD display, which looks like it's off Casio from 1985 or one of the early Tamagotchis. Tells you how fast you're going. It's got a couple of trip counters. I think it gives you sort of fuel economy, and that's it. You've got nothing else. In fact, it looks to me like it's de-evolved from the previous version of the bike. So it's about as simple as you can get. It's got indicator buttons, which is very small and takes a bit of getting used to, but it's okay. The horn is sounds ridiculous, but it's got one, and that's about it really. It's very, very basic. What it does have, I'm glad to say, to keep you safe, is it's got lean angle traction control and lean angle ABS. It's also got two mappings for on-road and off-road, and you can turn it all off if you want to go mad off-road. So it's got quite a lot of going on with it, even though it looks quite plain. So it's a bit deceptive, I suppose. Try the indicators here. Yeah, they're alright, they're just a bit stubby. You get used to it. There's a few things about changing gear on this bike. First of all, I found that the gear lever is, well, as it was in the wrong position for me, and I actually got my big adventure boot stuck inside it when I tried to change up, which is not ideal, but I've adjusted that. Comes off easily, and just tightened it back up again, and now all is fine. I have to say that the quick shifter is sublime, up and down, absolutely brilliant. For a bike like this to have a quick shifter come with it, and it's stock, didn't have to pay for it. It's absolutely brilliant. You know, particularly if you're off-road and you want to change down and you don't particularly want to be letting go because you're holding on for grim death. We're not all experts. So yeah, the quick shifter is brilliant. So changing gear, I definitely had to change the gear lever. I probably wouldn't have had to do that if I'd had ordinary boots on, but because I'm so high, I'm not riding this bike without my adventure boots. They just give me that little bit more height. They make me 5'10" and probably extend my inside leg to about 33 inches. Any shorter than that, if I was you, I'd say get this bike lowered. I mean, really, seriously, it's an enduro bike. It's got brilliant suspension. I'm not going to do any off-roading today, but trust me, this thing is set up for it. I'd feel a lot more comfortable tackling some of the off-road paths and lanes I've tried on my 790 Adventure. I'd feel a lot more comfortable on this bike. The one caveat is obviously the height from the ground, but again, although you're high up, it's quite good in terms of the way you can move the way your legs sit on the bike, because you're higher up, so it feels that the pegs are lower down, which they are obviously, so you've got less bend in your legs, or so it seems to me anyway. So yeah, off-road on this bike, you know, is just yeah, it's going to be not a problem at all, is it? Yes, it has 250mm suspension front and back, and it's proper WP off-road suspension, and you can feel it. That's the biggest difference between this and the 790S, obviously, is the feel of the suspension. It's absolutely plush, fully adjustable front and back. In fact, I'm probably going to be changing it to comfort mode at some point. Yes, of course you can stand up. It's perfect for that. Although, as I say, just in terms of proportions, I'm only 5'10", okay, but in terms of proportions standing up, yeah, I might be thinking of adding some bar risers at some point. Well, we'll see. But yeah, the one thing I would say is the pegs feel a bit narrow to me, so I'll probably be thinking of maybe widening them, but they're alright to begin with. They're solid enough, they're in a good position. Quite like those. Though with big boots, rally pegs might be in order. Now then, that's the thing, this bike, single cylinder, 690cc, 70 odd horsepower, 70 odd torque, Newton meters of torque, so you'd think it would shake you to pieces, and it is a bit more vibey than say a twin, but not much. Whatever they've done with balancer shafts and thing in the engine is very good. I hadn't even considered a single cylinder bike until I had to go on the 390 adventure, and I was so impressed with that that I thought, well, I can actually, for what I do, one cylinder is enough, it's fine, less hassle. And the service intervals on this are 6,000 miles or a year. I think probably you have to have the valves checked, you know, the tolerances every year, but it's only a single cylinder, so. But I didn't really want to go down to that small an engine yet, or that reduction in power, so I've kept most of the power, 70% of the power, and reduced the weight right down with a combination of the engine and the lightweightness of the engine and everything else on this bike. So yeah, and as for power, well, I really can't tell much of a difference. Coming on here now, if I was on my twin, I'd be wanting to get up to 60 straight away, so let's do that. 60, there you go, and I'm on the expressway. I've got the traction control on one, very easy to wheelie this bike if you turn it all off. Front wheel comes up nice and easily, but in England wheeling is an instant ban, so on the road anyway we'll be keeping the traction control firmly on one, which is what it's designed to do. So there's no lack of power. Obviously it's not a super bike, but I'm not after that sort of experience. I was always intrigued some years back when KTM came out with the travel section. Rather than adventure bikes, it said travel. And so they put all the adventure bikes in there, and then they put this one in there, where being called an Enduro, you think it would be in the Enduro section. So I don't think I would want to travel long distance on it, and I know people have been round the world on one of these. But you know, a couple of 100 miles, be okay, as long as you can get off every now and then or change the seat. Its main limitation, I would imagine, is that it just can't carry as much weight as a true adventure bike, and obviously you don't have the wind protection. I'll go on the motorway in a minute and we'll see what it's like. So travelling at 60 miles an hour, there's absolutely no sweat whatsoever, but there's bags more power and speed there. Really, it's just 60's not taxing it at all. That quick shifter is absolutely brilliant. One of the best things about this bike is the thing you would think it wouldn't require, that quick shifter. So we'll head on to the motorway. It's looking pretty congested and we'll see how it goes. So obviously this is a light bike, and up ahead I've got these lorries, so I can easily go fast enough to go past. It's not going to be a problem. But I wonder what it's like in the wash of the air. So here I am overtaking two lorries, 70 miles an hour. Feels fine. Plenty of power to burst past. No issues at all. And this is obviously where you start to feel the wind. Now I can feel it pressing against my chest. So if I put a screen on it, it's probably going to lift the wind off my chest, but then put it onto my helmet. So whether you need one or not depends, I suppose, how often you're going to be going at 70 miles an hour. But this easily cruising at 70. I don't even know what gear I'm in. I was in 5th, I think. That's 6th gear. It's barely taxing it. 5th gear, fine. Still barely taxing it. You can probably do 70 in 3rd, I would imagine. I'm not going to, because still breaking this bike in. Tons of power. Also feels quite stable. It's not a calm day, it's a bit windy. The trucks are obviously throwing quite a bit of wind up, so it's not the most relaxing ride on a motorway. You are quite high up and there's obviously crosswinds to deal with, but in stock form with no luggage I could ride this all day on here. So, I would say yes, it is a travel bike. Yes, it does have what's called a PASC clutch, which I think is a power assisted job, which is a bit odd really. It's hydraulic. Got a hydraulic clutch, and I have noticed one thing about that. There is one, not drawback, but something to note about having a power assisted clutch, is that when the bike is cold, if it's in gear and it's not, and you want to wheel it around on the driveway, it's quite difficult to get moving. Whether that's because the clutch doesn't engage properly without the power assistance, or the oil's thickened, I don't know, but quite noticeable. So just put it into neutral, it's fine. Well, it's an absolute hoot. I mean, absolutely so much fun to charge around twisty lanes, country lanes. Although it's called an Enduro, which I suppose suggests, you know, off-road, I mean, it's not far off a Supermoto. I mean, there is a Supermoto version of this bike, the SMC, which I'll talk about in a minute in terms of the tyres. But yeah, it's not far off that sort of feeling. You've got your 21-inch front wheel for the off-road, but I'm quite used to that, so I don't notice it. And you can't actually see it because the big mudguard's in the way. I think when you can see a 21-inch front wheel, it always looks worse than it is. They always look a lot narrower contact patch. So far, to quite a greasy day, I haven't felt anything. So it's an absolute hoot. I can't think of any other bike I'd want to be on, to be honest, on this sort of country twisty section. Now obviously, because you're high up on a greasy corner like this, it does take a little bit of faith that you're going to go around it without slipping, but trust me, so far there's been no slipping at all. This is a road that's drying out. We've had a couple of days of rain, which has sort of held up my appreciation of this bike. I think these are 50-50 road tyres, so treat it with respect, and the twisties are yours to enjoy, even muddy ones like these. Yeah, so despite that single cylinder, it's not that vibey at all. I mean, the mirrors aren't bouncing around, my hands aren't tingling, and there's no rubber in the foot pegs. My feet feel okay. Yeah, obviously after a couple of 100 miles on the motorway, you're probably going to feel that you want to rest, which you don't on an adventure bike. Quick shifter and downblip is an absolute joy on this, it really is. It's nice to know you've got some of those high quality safety aids as well. The whole package is just great fun. It's just a fun machine. Yeah, getting the side stand down can be tricky. More getting it up than down. So anyway. Okay, there I am on uneven ground, and I've got, I don't know if you can see, but that's one toe there, one toe there, but that's because the front wheel's up in the air, so it's quite tricky to get it off the side stand in that position, but I've done it. Once you put one foot on the pegs, you can get my left foot on the ground. It's okay. So here we have the 2020 KTM 690 Enduro R, and yeah, it's quite an agricultural looking thing. Sounds agricultural, but it's actually far more capable of travelling on roads than I would imagine anyway. Most people probably know that, but I was quite surprised by how good it is on the motorway. Quite placid, sat on the motorway, wasn't bothered by the wind. It's a very light bike. Now, what don't I like about it? I don't like that exhaust pipe. It's huge, it's red hot, because I think it has a catalytic converter inside of it, so that's one thing that I dislike. Two, I don't like the fact that it's tubed tyres rather than tubeless. That's probably because it doesn't know whether it's enduro or a travel bike, and traditionally your enduro bike you'd have tubes in because you want to run low pressures, also more forgiving if you crack a rim. So I might be deciding to do something about that at some point, maybe with a tubeless system or something similar. We'll see. The exhaust's probably going to have to go. It's quite heavy as well by all accounts, so a lighter, better looking exhaust. It's got handguards, but they are really, you know, other than keeping the wind off, they look pretty useless. So bark busters will have to go on there, which is quite a tricky thing because these aren't very wide grips, and I want heated grips and bark busters, and this all has to come off, but it can be done. I've seen it done, so I will get there. But I particularly want heated grips and bark busters. That combination might take a little bit of work, but we'll do it. What else don't I like about it? Obviously the seat height is very high for me, it's on my limit, which makes getting it off the side stand, which is a known thing, quite tricky. The side stand has quite a big sweep, so you think you've got it off and then it sticks, so you've got to bend the bike right over. But because the bike's so light, I can cope with that. So once you're aware of it and you know about it, that's fine. The other thing is I've noticed that it's quite a noisy bike. When you turn it on, you get the usual fuel pump sounds, but sometimes there's another sound which is I believe the servos inside the engine, which for some reason or other chatter quite a bit. It's a known issue, apparently it doesn't cause any problems, it's just a quirk of the bike, but it's something to be aware of if you do hear weird noises when the bike's switched off. Other than that, I think it's an amazing bike, absolutely brilliant. It's got a little bit of an identity crisis in whether it doesn't know whether it's an adventure bike or an enduro bike. I mean, I could get on it and go straight across that field there, only I don't want to get shot, but which it could do. And also, you've seen it on the motorway, it flew down the motorway and felt like it could stay on there for hours. It would be more fatiguing though than a proper adventure bike, so it's somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere between a dirt bike and an adventure bike. It's in a class of its own. The KTM 690 Enduro R. Pretty unique, I think. Yes, it comes with Mitas E07, which I think are 50/50 tyres. Quite knobbly, but very good on the road, as you saw. Front and back, but tubed. It has terrific brakes. It's got Brembos front and back. Only a single disc on the front, single disc on the back. They are Brembo. I have to say, very, very good as well. Stop the bike, plenty of stopping power for this bike, but being so light. I believe the Supermoto has a bit more braking on the front than this bike, but to be honest, it doesn't need it. I think you'd be feeling like you're going to go over the handlebars, but I suppose that's the point with the Supermoto. Well, let's see, we've got Brembo's front, Brembo's back, nobody behind us. Let's stop. Whoa, that stops. Sorry, put my face back on. There's a suspension, Explorer R. Very, very good. Weirdly, it does have incandescent bulbs in the front, well, halogen. It's got LED indicators and it's got LED tail light and LED rear indicators. For some bizarre reason, it still has halogen bulbs at the front. You can buy an LED kit for it, but I'm quite happy with it. It seems quite bright. All right. Well, it does come with rear foot pegs, which I haven't fitted, but it does come with them, and grab handles, so you could carry a passenger. So in theory, you could have a passenger on this. You wouldn't want to go very far. Also, it's got a very strong orange to indicate the R subframe, but the rear subframe is plastic. It's just the fuel tank, so you wouldn't want to put too much weight on the back of there. But I've absolutely no doubt I'll be adding a Perrin Moto rack, not least because he's got the bike himself, but also I found that rack to be so good on the 790. I can't tell you how adaptable it was, so that will be the first thing probably to go on there. I've also got a metal bash plate coming to fit onto it. I haven't fitted the plastic one yet. Won't worry too much about that at the moment. Yeah, so as an all-round package of a bike where you can go off-road if you want to, or you can go down the motorway if you want to, or you could do a couple of 100 miles for a weekend, I think it's unsurpassed, which of course is why I've chosen it to be my next bike. So stay tuned to my channel, keep an eye on the ownership playlist which will go along with this bike, and as I adapt it to my needs or find out the good things and the bad things about it, I'll keep you informed. Right, let's ride. The bike does come with a USB socket as standard, on the side here for your phone or GPS or whatever, and it's switched too, which is very good, because quite often the KTM USBs that I've had in the past have been on all the time, so I quite like that. Doesn't mean you don't minimise the risk of a short circuit or whatever if you leave something plugged in. So that's one other little luxury that it does have, which is very useful. 5-volt USB. Amazing how quickly you get used to stopping at the lights in first. After years of having a gear indicator, I haven't missed it, must say. This bike out here on a day like today, heaven. Come on Wolfgang, let's go. Oh yeah, one other thing, what I remember. Yeah, apparently the brake pedal on these is very flimsy and can bend and go through your clutch cover. So, well, I can gather there's two possibilities. One is to fit clutch covers, protectors, which I have got. Alternatively, to put a stronger brake pedal on it, which I think are available from Rade Garage or Raid Garage. So I may do that as well at some point. Well, obviously you're very high up, you can see over everything. In fact, you feel like you're sitting on top of the world. But you still have that doubt that when you put your foot down, are you going to actually reach the ground or not? So far, every time I've done that. You just have to be ready to slide off if necessary, but I haven't had to do that once. And for filtering through the traffic, it's absolutely brilliant. So in town, I've got no qualms about this bike whatsoever. Yeah, the other good thing about this bike in the city is potholes everywhere. The suspension's brilliant for it. You can see over it. Obviously the negative is, being so high up, if you stop on a pothole, well, that could end badly. Let's hope we don't do that. It's so light, there's no real reason why that should ever feel like it's going to fall over, really. Yeah, another plus of this bike is, although it kind of urges you on with its power and everything, if you just up a gear, sit back and just trundle along, it's actually quite relaxing. Don't like the exhaust, but it's not too noisy, so it can be quite nice to just take it easy. So as I rumble back past a speed camera or two, would I have this bike as my only bike? Yes, as many of you already know, this already is my only bike, and I'm not disappointed by it. I really like it. It does everything I want to do at this moment in time. If I was going to be travelling long distances every day, probably not. If I wanted to carry a pillion long distances every day, definitely not. But for what I want to do, fits every criteria. It's got lots more potential than I'm ever probably going to be able to give it, although I intend to give it some testing circumstances in due course, as you shall see. The rain is falling now, and I'm getting wet. I'm on a motorcycle. Not too bad. Okay, so all in all, I think the pluses far outweigh the negatives. There are a couple of negatives which I hope I've highlighted for anybody who's thinking of getting one of these. I should like to say thank you for listening, watching, following, supporting me. Really appreciate it. It's a great hobby. It's not just the motorcycling, but having the YouTube channel alongside with it. I really do appreciate it. So, till the next time, Codger Biker is out! Got all my adventure gear on, look, not getting wet at all. Maybe just turn the heat grips up a notch. There we go.